Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Alright, lads and lassies, I was listening to an interview, that interview there on screen, which was with IFL Umar, and Billy Joe Saunders for IFL TV. And I was at the start of it, it was just kind of Billy Joe was talking about a fighter who, was up and coming, this, that, and the other. Forget the guy's name actually now, it's only just slipped my mind. But what I found so interesting about that is the way Billy Joe was speaking about Eddie Hearn. He was, you could tell he was holding back, but you could tell he was very not happy, is the best way. I don't want to say angry, but he was definitely not best pleased with Eddie Hearn. And the reason why he was not best pleased with Eddie Hearn, just judging by what he was saying in this, he said that he needs to have a chat with Eddie Hearn, basically is what the words he used. And the reason he is because he was under the impression that when he was signing for this fight, one of the stipulations he had was the judges. So essentially, he said in this interview that the judges were agreed upon were one from Britain, one from the US, and one from Mexico. So impartial. So you have one from each person's home country, and then you have a neutral judge from America. Now, that is a perfectly reasonable demand. There's no issues there. I believe in the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight, there was one American judge. There was definitely, I think it was Phil Edwards, who was the judge who actually scored that fight a draw. And I forget where the other judge was from, but it's not uncommon for that to happen. Sometimes it just be a case of where, you'll have one foreign fighter and you'll have one American fighter, and all three judges could be American, i.e. Kovalev versus Ward. That was Team Kovalev's error because they believed they'd knock Ward out. They didn't need the judges, but they had three Americans. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. But Billy Joe has now stated that the Texas Athletic Commission, I don't know if that's the actual name for them, but the people who, overlook the sport in Texas, they basically not agreed to that. So you would imagine that these are going to be judges that are going to be a bit more probably, I don't want to say pro Canelo, but they're definitely not going to do Billy Joe any favours, judging by, the fact that, they're not what he originally wanted in terms of, a Mexican judge, a US judge, and a British judge. It's not going to be that. You would imagine if that's the case, probably we're going to get a referee who is going to maybe, like that referee last night in the Demetrius Andre versus Liam Williams fight, he was a little bit, he let a lot of things slide in there. He really did. We might see something like that, to be honest with you, whereas a referee who was a bit more like lenient towards, I'm not saying Canelo fouls, he's actually quite clean, but maybe might not make life easy for Billy Joe, if you know what I mean. Bit like that referee we had in AJ versus Parker. He was a joke. He was an absolute fool of a referee. So I can't blame Billy Joe for being angry. He was mentioning the fact that Eddie, I already touched on this in a video a few weeks ago, but he was mentioning the fact that Eddie Hearn is already planning Canelo Alvarez's next fight. And that to me is really, I get why he's doing it, because he obviously wants to keep Canelo. Canelo is the biggest cash cow in boxing. Eddie Hearn wants some of that. I can see why he's doing it, but to be so open about it is, I can't blame Billy Joe for being annoyed. And if Eddie Hearn knew all along that these judges were never going to be the way Billy Joe wanted it, and he just went along with it just to get Billy Joe to sign this contract, that's a real shitty move from Eddie Hearn. That's a real scummy thing to do. It really does show that, look, I'm just going to say it, Eddie Hearn's done a lot of good, but he's not infallible. You basically sold your fighter out just to get Canelo, essentially. I'll touch on this more in a sec, actually. I was just going to say something there, but I'll touch on that in a bit. But you would imagine, look, Eddie Hearn, he wants to keep Canelo. He obviously knows that Canelo is the biggest cash cow in boxing. He wants to work with him after these two fights, because it is a 2-fight deal, but he obviously wants to keep Canelo on. Canelo seemingly is very happy with Eddie Hearn, so there's no reason why this relationship won't carry on. So Eddie Hearn just wants to make sure that he keeps Canelo on his good side, that he's working with Matchroom moving forward, because Eddie Hearn wants to make some of that money as well. Right? Canelo is just, you've Anthony Joshua and then you've Canelo. It's just like that. He could potentially have Canelo versus Caleb Plant, Canelo versus Triple G, and then do AJ Fury. Big times for Eddie Hearn, and he wants Canelo definitely. But I know he wants Canelo to stay with him, but when it's an in-house fight, so it's not like Billy Joe is still a Queensbury fighter. He's a Matchroom fight. You could at least try and not be so brazen in how, I want this guy to win. At least you could try and be a bit more impartial. All right, we know Eddie Hearn is obviously going to be pulling for Canelo, but at least you could try and not make it so bloody obvious. In terms of Billy Joe, I've said this for a while, and I remember when Billy Joe signed at Matchroom, I was confused. I was kind of like taken aback because Billy Joe at the time was WBO champion. WBO, well, he still is WBO super middleweight champion, but he'd had a long relationship with Frank Warren. It was a good relationship by Frank Warren's standards. There was never any acrimony there. They split on good terms. I suspect the reason why it was on good terms is because Frank Warren maybe understood that Billy Joe had been loyal since he turned pro, and maybe he just kind of felt, you know what, I'm not going to let this, because he's been with me through the Box Nation days, everything. So maybe when Billy Joe wanted to go, he just let him go, sail off into the sunset. But the fact is that he went to Eddie Hearn, and Billy Joe in the past has been very vocal about criticising Eddie Hearn. His dad called Eddie Hearn several names after the whole nasal spray situation came out, or incident I should say, and I believe Billy Joe's dad even threatened to fight Eddie Hearn. So for me, it was kind of a head scratch when it's like, you've said so much bad stuff about this guy, you've had animosity there, now you're going to let him promote you? I mean, do you trust this? Like, because Eddie Hearn, obviously he's a businessman, but is he really, knowing the things you've said about him over the years and what your dad said about him, is he really gonna treat you with, or give you all his time when you've said a lot of things about him in the past? So that was one thing I always wondered. Like, I'm like, why did he sign with Hearn? Like, I can understand it from, a matchmaking point of view. Maybe he's got more, maybe he's thinking, deeper pockets, stuff like that. But do you really think he's going to be as forthcoming and as kind to you when you've said things about him in the past? I know in Eddie Hearn he doesn't tend to hold grudges, but still, you'd imagine there's got to be a little bit of memory of the things Billy Joe and his dad have said in the past, and maybe he's just thinking, well, hang on a second, I don't, you need me more than I need you, sort of way. So it could be something like that. In terms, look, stylistically, when I look at this fight, I'm going to do a prediction video probably this week on it. I think Canelo's going to win this fight. I'm more convinced he's going to win it now that I hear about this judging thing, because you'd imagine there are going to be judges that will favour what Canelo does. He is the cash cow in this fight. He is the guy they're planning his next fight, so you would imagine they don't want any banana skins. It does mean that Billy Joe, if he has any chance of winning this fight, he is really going to have to box out of his skin. Like, if he was content to just try and nick some of these rounds and hope that he gets some of them, he's going to have to stamp his authority on all the rounds in order to get them now. Seriously. I still think he can offset Canelo. I still think he will look good in this fight. I think Canelo will win. I think he'll win legitimately. Personally, I genuinely think he'll win legitimately. What I mean by that is that when we get the scorecards read out, he will win. If they might be a bit wider than the fight is, but they will be it'd be the correct decision. All right? I don't see any robbery. I think Canelo's going to win it legit, but I think he might win it wider than the fight actually is, if that makes sense. If I was Billy Joe, because you could tell in that interview Billy Joe was holding back, I imagine Billy Joe, win or lose, won't be fighting with Eddie Hearn moving forward. I imagine that kind of trust is broken, and I'd imagine that he will be looking elsewhere if he continues his career. Some people are saying that he'll try in this fight, he'll get the payday, he'll retire. I reckon he'll still fight. Personally, I reckon he might try and maybe go back down to middleweight, win a title down there, maybe rematch Eubank Jr. or something. But I would imagine that if he is going to carry on his career, it won't be with Eddie Hearn. I could see him going back to Frank Warren. I can see him just saying, you know what, at least Frank, he might not have given me the big fights, but at least he was always, like, from my guess, he was always fair to Billy Joe. He never really had a bad word to say about him. He was always, and he still speaks very highly of Billy Joe now. So, Frank Warren's not a nice guy. Make no mistake about that. He's not a good guy. But maybe Billy Joe looks at him and thinks, you know what, at least he's never spoke of me in, well, Billy Joe's my fighter, but this other fighter, he's going to fight this guy next after he beats Billy Joe. It's never been like that. So it might be something like that. Going to end it here. I've been rambling a bit in this video. I've been going on for a while. It was just a weird one. Like, when I heard that interview, I was just like, damn. And then when I heard like that, he signed that agreeing that it would be judges this sort of Mexican, American, British, and then for it not to happen, I was like, that's not cool. If you're telling someone that and then you go back, that's not cool. So I'll leave it at that. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, lads and lassies, smash the like button. Didn't do a live stream today. I'll tell you why, because I was out all day. I wasn't even in Dublin. I was gonzo, so I'm not long home, and it's like 11:45 at night. So yeah, I was gone all day. Apologies. We'll do one probably this evening, if not tomorrow. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Smash the like button if you did. Hashtag GMansRocks, all that good stuff. I'll talk to you. Peace.